At the end of your life, what will be your legacy? What will you leave behind for future generations? For the world, join the World Messenger, Izabela Lundberg, each week as she brings you a new distinguished guest from the business, sports, or entertainment world to share their success, their struggles, and their lessons. They will share their insights into current hot topics that affect everyone. Izabela facilitates an intimate, vulnerable environment to find the true value of humanity and real leadership. Are you ready for your legacy? The legacy that matters?
Hello, my beautiful friends. It's Izabela Lundberg here, the World Messenger, and I'm welcoming you again for another phenomenal episode of the Legacy Leaders show. We have a very special guest coming from Tampa Bay this morning, and he is great friend and someone who I've been watching for a while on LinkedIn that is absolutely passionate about technology innovation and working with executives, areas that I love as well. And he is Vice President of Services for Gartner for General Managers Program. But he is also working with the lead research and advocacy within the Gartner, which I'm sure you guys are curious to learn more what that all means specifically during the current time that we're in. So without further ado, welcome Michael Massetti. Welcome.
Izabela, hello. Thank you so much for this opportunity. I look forward to, I think this is the third time we've had an extended conversation. So great to spend the day with you.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for finding time. I know you have a very busy schedule, specifically obviously 2020 is being challenging for so many of us, and I'm sure with you would position you in and how the tremendous needs are that your time get eaten up very quickly, doesn't it?
Oh, absolutely. And it's interesting that the disruption that we've seen in the challenges in 2020 has only made time availability worse, not better as some people thought. I can explain that more as we go along.
I cannot wait to dive in, but before we even start on the current time and depicting what is happening, do you mind just sharing, how did you get involved in technology and consistently being throughout all your professional career part of it?
You know, I have to go way back in life to the starting point. My dad was an electrician. He never graduated high school. His mom had died at a young age, and he was in a large immigrant family, so he had to start working. And he told me his son was not going to be stuck in that same kind of thing. And he was an electrician, and he said, you should be an electrical engineer. And I thought about that. And in seventh grade and eighth grade, so 1971 timeframe, I was introduced to a computer and fell in love with it, and have been playing with it ever since. Technology is just a lot of fun. I'm a device geek, computing, phones, you name it. And it's exciting because so many good things have come out of technology and the innovation that we've seen. Of course, many challenges as well, but the overriding benefits of technology have been great. And it's just been a pleasure and really exciting to be part of that, even if it's just a small part.
That's fantastic. So you knew it when as soon you start playing with the computers, that's the really direction you wanted to go. And you've been working with some really prestigious companies and through their growth and contraction, as well as challenges. So do you mind just sharing, obviously, in the last 20 or 30 years, what you've seen, what has happened? Obviously, technology is evolving, but things really from the background or from behind the scene, what do you see is truly happening?
You know, that's a really good question, and I want to take that perspective really from the human side of it. Right? You know, technology gets all the press, but at the end of the day, it's there, hopefully, to help humans communicate, work more effectively, etc. But you know, what we've seen is really a combination of huge technology innovations that have been very, very disruptive, and as we've entered into the 21st century, Mother Nature has thrown a lot of disruptions at us. So how we all as leaders and organizations evolve in those areas has been really key to me. We were introduced to the internet in the early 90s, and it hit us in a very big way right at the turn of the century. When Apple introduced iTunes, a subscription service space for people to buy things, it hit us really, really hard. The iPhone and smartphones that came out around 2007, 2008, basically got rid of all those little phones that everybody had. I remember back at that time, we stick them in our pocket because they were nice and small, and now we carry around these 7-inch little devices. So, you know, we continue to see these huge disruptions in us, and most recently, voice activated and artificial intelligence-based devices like Siri and Cortana and Alexa and what have you, that we're now talking to things to get our jobs done. So I think that's been a really, really huge part of what we've seen over the last 25 or so years. And then coupled with that, people, you know, we're connected. And I think I'll highlight just one part of this. We're connected now. You know, we have 24/7 is sort of a cliche that we all like to use, but we're virtually connected 24/7. It's hard to have someone go on vacation and say, look, if you do one more email, we're going to shut your email off while you're on vacation. So that puts a lot of stress on people and the organizations to, you know, mentor good behavior, right? It's not smart for me on Sunday night if I'm on vacation, especially sending emails to my team. It creates even more stress and pressure. And then you have the type of people who are just real high performers, and they believe 24/7 connectivity is key to them, and they're constantly engaged. So many disruptions in technology side, many these type of challenges on the humans. And then in the last 15 years, we've seen earthquakes, we've seen volcano disruptions, we've had major
natural
fires,
disasters,
lots of natural disasters, and they're, you know, the big ones that we used to say happen once in a lifetime are happening almost annually now. So big challenges in a lot of areas for people and leaders and organizations.
You really tackle a lot of here, and thank you so much for sharing major disruptions, things that really serve us well, but then also that we're finding that are affecting human dynamics, human nature, right? Because Absolutely. We desire to be connected, but then at the same time, we need to have a time to unplug, self-care, as well as also create a healthy working environment. And those are now more and more challenging, specifically in the United States, to be preserved, because a lot of organizations, before even COVID, we're pushing more and more what is possible in terms of performance and in terms of delivery that appeared to be taking away that human aspects of it. And that obviously creates a lot of stressors. So do you mind sharing a little bit about the culture you're part of right now? And I want you to use your words, what type of culture you're involved in. But seems like you also had some major disruptions before you got to the Gartner. And do you mind just showing cycle of the technology, even with the change with certain companies and something that you work with Dell, if you don't mind just comparing and to pick a few companies that you work with and challenges they experienced way before, obviously, 2020, COVID, and this major economic shift.
Oh, sure. Yeah, I can think of, let me connect 3 points over the course of my now 41-year career. I started with IBM, had a great experience there for 18 years in the semiconductor division. And the way I would characterize IBM, and not in a denigrating way from my former colleagues and what have you, it moved relatively slowly. Right? It was a very large company, a phenomenal company to be part of and to have on your resume. But it got surprised by the PC marketplace that it created. Didn't respond very well, and there I am 14 years into my career, and we're having these big layoffs and what have you. The PC industry starts taking off. I got the opportunity to join Dell, and the way I used to describe it to the people I was hiring and recruiting to come join Dell is bring your running shoes. It was a really, really highly innovative culture, take every hill that it could take, move very quickly. If there was ever a company that talked about and actually exemplified how to take smart risk and how to be, you know, agile and aggressive in behavior in the marketplace, it was Dell. It was really phenomenal. But then I had a personal disruption. The 2001 internet bubble, as we like to call it now, burst. I was among several thousand people who got laid off from Dell, and I found myself now wanting for what next. And at the time, 9/11 happened, so another one of those major disruptions. And as you're sitting there on the couch watching the towers in the city I grew up in collapse, you start saying, what is going to happen next? And for me, it was a big transition. I was hired into Lucent Technologies in the world of supply chain and sourcing. And you know, from that point forward, I've been in mostly the supply chain until recently. But the other point I wanted to bring up is advanced micro devices. I joined them right after the 2008 and 2007 financial crisis. So business was in a horrible, horrible shape. I joined at a time where more people were getting taken out than be brought in. So I was very, very fortunate to have that there. But what I saw was a company that had the utmost survival gene. There was nothing that would ever prevent AMD from being successful. They had a lot of challenges in the technology, clearly an excellent and formidable competitor with Intel, but just that culture of we will win, we will win, we will win. was just so great to be part of. And even now that I'm gone for 6 or 7 years, you look at what they've done in the marketplace. So they came back out and they're shining like a phoenix. I mean, if anything embodies stay with it, keep going. If at first you don't succeed, it's AMD. So it was great. Three completely different cultures in the career that I got to witness and be part of.
But I'm sure amazing experience and amazing wealth of knowledge that helped you obviously to pivot now during this current time and help your employees and your coworkers, because a lot of organizations and a lot of partners and a lot of vendors and clients are really, really struggling. So it's always great to have that not only winning attitude, but also supporting attitude, because you've been there and done that on personal and professional level. So you really know how to continue to nurture that. You just mentioned something also in terms of September 11th. We just had a few days ago recently anniversary, and you grew up in New York. Do you mind just sharing, have you been in New York during the time that event occurred, or you were already relocated outside of New York?
Yeah, I was living in Austin, Texas at the time. But I wound up, as I was interviewing before joining Lucent Technologies, and thanks to Joe Carson and Jose Mejia, call out in case you guys watched this, for hiring me back then. But I drove around New York City after the interviews. I had a weekend in between interviews. So I drove from New Jersey over to my sister's in Long Island and back. And I did it in such a way that I encircled the entire city. And it was really, really hard to take your eyes off the gap in the sky. I mean, the towers were built in 1971, and they were a permanent fixture for the next 30 years than anybody who's lived and grown up or visited New York. And so that absence was just really, really striking. So I've been back and forth quite a bit. The last time I was in New York was Super Bowl Sunday this year, and then at the end of February, right as COVID was hitting. So I had my masks, I had my wipes and everything, knowing that it was flu season anyway, but not knowing that we were on the verge of another big disruption at the time.
Wow. Wow. Thank you for sharing that, because obviously everybody's been impacted and affected, and then specifically when your city you grew up has a definitely different weight. And that really also brings fast forward with the current events and what is really happening right now in the United States. We have a lot of extreme disasters that are obviously fires and environmentally related. And then we also have a COVID and so many things that really, as a result, are affecting employees after performance and also direction. It's very, very hard to really move forward with ease, specifically when everybody's now working from home. Kids are screaming in the background because you're schooling from home as well. So do you mind sharing some of the dynamics that you experienced and that you're seeing from your colleagues, and just to some of the new trends as a result of what we're experiencing now, please?
Yeah, let me set the table and then answer the question directly. So the organization that I'm part of at Gartner, we advise high technology general managers on product strategy and vision, go to market, all the things that allow them to bring their services and their products to the marketplace. And one of the jokes and memes that have been floating around is, the question that you ask a CEO or your CIO, what is it that drove your digital transformation, right? And the answer they circle is COVID, right? This disruption, which has been disastrous to so many people and a challenge to many, many around the world, has also opened up the eyes of a lot of executives and leaders that they needed to transform their business models even more aggressively than they had ever thought about. So we're stuck in the middle of that, or placed very, very nicely in the middle of that. And what I mentioned to you as we were talking just before, one of the things that has really, really stood out for me with my team, and I've got a team of very, very senior executives. Pleasure to work with these guys. But it's this combination of our clients are now not traveling anymore. They've got all these pressures about growing their business, getting their products into the marketplace. So they're connecting with us at record high levels, which is great for the business, but the guys are overwhelmed. Okay, so they're just getting, I've got all this call, I got this meeting, I need to do this plan for this client, I've got to prepare this presentation, they want us to have a discussion with their CEO, a lot of really, really great things in terms of helping them with their business. But the flip side of it is nobody's traveling. Everybody's at home, children, dogs, wives, husbands, whatever it might be. And there's a sense of almost being disconnected because, as we like to say, pressing flesh, even if it's 2 or 3 times a year, just meeting with your colleagues and friends, meeting with your clients or your suppliers and having that interaction, it just fills a big part of the human component that well, I'm getting very used to talking to people on Zoom or WebEx or Teams all day long. That's sort of what my job is. You miss the opportunity to sit with somebody and take a pause and think about something and have a conversation not governed and dictated here. So, for me as a lead, it's been a lot more sensitive about them personally. Asking how things are going every day in a genuine way, in an authentic way, not just to say, okay, I checked that one off the list, but hey, how's it going home? Things going okay? Boy, I see you were really busy this week. Is there anything I can do? I think for me, that is probably the most telling aspect of this. Is really, really emphasizes the human emotional quotient or emotional intelligence side of what's required as a leader, and the empathy necessary to stay connected with your team and to help them go through a difficult time.
That is wonderful, and I'm so glad that you're one of those very supportive leaders in your organization, within your team, because we need more help than ever before, obviously, and need to offer that without even wondering or waiting for people to ask, because right now, a lot of people are for first time experiencing the magnitude of so many complex issues that they just can't even compare and voice it, what exactly is going on with them, right? But then also, I'm sure the clients that we're serving, specifically executives, because imagine now making decisions and multiplying that and amplifying with such a level of crisis. And it's like, how do I know that I'm making the right decision? I'm counting on these analytics reports and supports and partnerships with Gartner or other partners that we're working with in order to make those decisions in the best light, and not only short term, but also long term. Because looking right now, even statistics in 2019, just the top 10 Fortune 500 companies scale change in the last 10 years dramatically. From those 10, only 2 of them stayed on that scale. So it's predicted already, not only financial implications, but we're seeing a lot of contraction right now. So do you mind sharing a little bit also what your clients, what C-suite is experiencing at this moment? So for listeners that are part of it or working with, and they're not really fully aware of some of the systematic issues, that really, again, can have a really good, strong perspective coming directly from you.
You know what, I think one of the most intriguing things that I have gleaned from the clients that we work with is, while at the same time, right now, clearly there are some very, very short-term things that are really compelling. Like, are my employees safe? Can I still run my business? When do I open up my offices if I have offices? When do I start allowing people to travel safely and not feel like we're forcing people to do things? So, there's so much of this stuff that's very, very uncertain. I don't know that any of us can predict, and anybody who tries is arguably kidding themselves, but I don't know that any of us can predict what's going to happen in the next 3 to 6 to 9 months, right? Other than take one day at a time, stay focused on your priorities. But one of the things that we've seen, like I said, that's sort of dichotomous to that is the long-term plan. What do I need to do with an office space in the future? Should I really plan on having everybody there? How can I improve my organization's overall digital capabilities so that people can work remotely? I know I've been working at home now, and we've noticed that the connection back into the company is a little slower than it used to be when there was only a few hundred of us working at home. Now there's 10,000 people working at home. How do companies adapt to that? How do they deal with innovation long term? I think as we go through things today, people are starting to say, well, we can be very productive at home. I'm not driving. Yeah, I'm getting distracted by my dog once in a while, but I'm now focused and I get in early and I work long. But at the same time, there's concerns about, are we losing some of the capabilities of the innovation culture that you have in the organization, or the culture at all as you bring new people in? So, we see a lot of executives really thinking longer term about what they need to do. And I think one of the cool things is that they're thinking very holistically. So they talk about organization, they talk about culture, they talk about the office of the future, they talk about the productivity, but they also talk about how do they be successful and grow in the marketplace and continue to lead forward and be successful. So like I said, interesting dichotomy between the uncertainty and what you need to do to tackle today, but also the vision that they're carrying and the focus on the future that we see.
That's fantastic. It's so actually great to hear that they don't lose the sight on the vision and direction of organization and mission. What is organization out to do? but then also looking on all those pieces and how they're adjusting and changing so that that division and mission is supported. I also love piece of culture, because a lot of cultural aspects, as we know, are shifting and changing, and that could be really hard to reel back. And as a result, different dynamics and patterns, what we're doing, how we're doing, also changing. That will be hard to gain back, depending upon how long this is going to last. And a lot of questions that others are asking is like, Izabela, what's your prediction? How long is this going to last from the global standpoint? And then also, you know, what is the pulse in the United States? And I have to say, you know, we're going to have a little bit more tougher time before we actually see smooth sailing again. And it's sad, because a lot of organizations I found are stuck still in the past. And just the fact that we're not going to go back where we used to be, and that things cannot really function on that level. It's a lot of choices and decisions also to be made.
Oh, absolutely.
Conscious leadership for much more community-based leadership, much more impact, different programs, not just more to appeal, attractive, or just to check off, as you mentioned earlier. We're providing, supporting different NGOs, but what we're really truly doing, how we are being as an organization, and how we truly do attract, again, talent and people to be part of it.
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, you know, talking about attracting talent and what have you, you know, my team is 100% remote. As a good part of our service organization is, we just hired somebody. Usually we hire somebody, we bring them to the corporate headquarters in Connecticut. We spend a week, introduce them to people. They go through a couple of the pre-designed classes, and at least they get to put names and faces and a physical structure with their role. He hasn't left his home yet.
Wow.
He's still working 2 months in, right? You know, we're helping him out and everything, but it's a completely different experience, because you know, you haven't met anybody new, you haven't seen the facility, you haven't gotten a Gartner pen or whatever it might be. So that it's just really interesting that the change that has, and of course the interaction as the leader that it, you know, forced on us, and it's, you know, compels us to, you know, stay in touch. We have every Monday we talk, but we're talking 3 or 4 times during the week as well, just to make sure that that whole onboarding process and becoming part of the team and feeling like you're part of the fabric actually happens. So that you can imagine that in a remote environment, that and people just working at home, whether it's full-time or just in this short duration that we're going through now, that's a really difficult thing to get traction on who you are, who the company is, what is the dynamic of the organization like, right? The things that we like to call culture. Is there a sense of humor here? Are we very serious? How do we collaborate? How do we escalate issues, right? There's so much that's ingrained in it that it's very hard to do when you're far away, and the lack of connections there. And so, you know, it falls on the leaders to be aware of that, and then B, to be proactive and do things with their people and help them as much as they can.
Very true. And if you don't mind, what would be some of suggestions or recommendations? It seems like you're doing a lot of things extremely well, but what would you recommend? What would be the secret sauce, or at least 2 or 3 golden nuggets that they should make sure that they're implementing with their teams?
Yeah. You know, it's, I think number one, tell people, and I've encouraged my guys, spend time for yourself. Take a break. It's okay if you take a day off on a Friday. In fact, we scheduled a couple of weeks ago an afternoon virtual happy hour that we got everybody in just to chat on Labor Day weekend. Yeah. So just encouraging people to take some personal time, because you know, another one of the jokes that you could find in social media was, I can't tell if I'm working at home or sleeping in my office, and that's not a good sign, right? So you take some time to rest. You know, number 2 is I always ask, what can I do for you? And I think that's important. Again, it has to be genuine. It can't be, hey, do you need anything from me? Okay, thanks, bye. But hey, what can I do to help? Listen for clues and hints of frustration. Look for an email signs of frustration, or passive aggressive behavior, or anything like that that says my people are feeling stressed. Going back to what I said before, they're feeling overwhelmed, or they feel disconnected, or the confluence of those 2 emotions, right? So, you know, asking for help. And then the third one, which sort of lays on top of all that, is just, you know, empathy. Listen, observe, be aware of yourself, be aware of them and what you can do. It just, it's really, in my mind right now, while we talk about technology and all that stuff, technology is great. It's enables. I'm surrounded by 2 computers, 2 cell phones, a printer, modems, all within about 5 feet of me here that no one can see on the screen, of course. But at the end of the day, it's those one-on-one relationships. It's those conversations. And I talk to my guys every single week. Sometimes they're 15, 20-minute calls. And a lot of times we chat, but just staying connected, listening, and like I said, addressing the points of take time to rest, make sure that they're getting the support they need, and looking for signs of undue stress or overwhelming behavior on them.
That is brilliant. And I love that you just mentioned that again, because September is a month of the suicide prevention, and seeing insane high amount of suicide, specifically actually around seasoned veterans and C-suite executives amongst others. But definitely, you know, when you think about it, it's like, what is giving out in terms of pressure and lack of support? And as you just said, that genuine connection and relationship, knowing that again, we don't have to do everything ourselves, that we have that internal support, that people truly genuinely care, that we will find solution. You can definitely ask questions.
Sure.
A lot of that, unfortunately, does not come to the light, which often is too late.
Yeah.
And seeing this new pattern, since like you guys are already instituting very healthy environment, not only for self-care, but also for great mental health check for everybody, and holding everybody to that standard, that is really, really admirable actually during the current events. So.
Yeah, and I have to praise my company. I mean, Gartner's done a great job of that, keeping managers aware, keeping people aware, and letting people know there's resources out there. You know, it's I'm not sure compassion is one of the first words that anybody would use to describe the general state of things here in the United States today, and many parts of the world. But that's such an important thing right now to understand that everybody's going through things differently. No matter who they are, where they are in their life, their career, or whatever. You know, as an individual, if you have leadership responsibility, you need to be sensitive and aware of all of the things that could be going on with people, because at the end of the day, their commitment to do a great job, a big part of that, of course, is intrinsic to them as individuals. And you know, like I said, I've got a lot of people who are 30 years of experience in my organization. So these people are naturally driven. But on the other hand, you know, you've got to really make sure that you've demonstrated that you're trustworthy as a leader, that you have the empathy, you will listen to them and appreciate and respect them, that you know the business well, that you trust them, right? That foundation of trust, respect, rapport are really, really core to helping people feel comfortable and not exposed or overly, or overwhelmed in the situation that we're dealing with today. And it's a real human time. And you know, I know we started with technology and we're talking through technology, but in my mind, it's really a human time right now, and very important.
And I'm glad you're bringing this up, because, you know, being in San Francisco, for example, and then listening about artificial intelligence and then machine learning and all these different pieces, but also how careful we need to be amongst actually C-suite, you know, how some danger of the technology also could truly not only cause major problems, but also affect reversely humanity. I'm glad that we're pausing and level setting, because the value, again, who is the biggest asset? It's not just the brand and technology the company offers and solutions that they have, but there are people that are driving those solutions and engagements. And now I think hopefully more and more companies and more CEOs will understand and see this shift was necessary to level set and fill the gap and prioritize who is the biggest asset in that company, and how you protect those assets. And because we got to the point that we really start creating very unhealthy culture. And what happens usually with the global companies, other countries start replicating that. And what will we see? Snowballing domino effect of reversed actually implications of something that initially maybe started as, you know, good thing to do and good practice, right? Mm-hmm. But if you don't mind, Michael, could you just please share a little bit about you also have data. You have insane amount of data and analytics, and you can compare now these components, technology, trends, what's coming, what this 6, 8, 9 months in this year teaching us. Do you mind sharing some of the really solid examples of what is happening and where we headed, that we're bringing this, again, people, process, technology component together? And what do you see in terms of trends and actually high demands and needs?
Sure, sure. So I'm compelled to use one of my favorite sayings right now is that inflection points are only visible in the rearview mirror. And, 2020 has been a very huge inflection point. And I use that to say that trends are trends, and businesses, but always every marketing plan, every business plan you'll ever see has something that's going up and to the right. No one ever says, oh, there's going to be this bubble out here in August of whatever year, and we're going to go backwards for a while, but they happen. So I think one of the biggest trends that we're starting to see right now is just risk and resiliency management, which has been around for a while. And if you talk to people in the profession, whether it's in supply chain, which of course is arguably the most visible functional area that gets affected by the type of disruptions that we've seen. An organization that doesn't know how well or how quickly or what it needs to do to respond when something happens and be resilient, be able to get back to normal operations as quickly as possible. That's critical right now. And there's a lot of attention being paid to that. Right? I think that's number one. Number two, as we see digital transformation occurring, Izabela, you mentioned things like artificial intelligence, machine learning, right? Those are core components to a more digital future. I think we've been digital for a number of years by now, but let's say a way more digital future. Security is also really, really critical. We've had plenty of stories and are all aware of major hacks and people losing their credit cards and companies losing revenue streams and things like that. But security is really, really critical in terms of how people protect their companies, how individuals protect themselves, but also how technology developers produce products and services that actually have security and risk built into them. Right? And not to make this an Apple commercial, but Apple's TV commercials of late have been talking about security, and they have somebody walking around telling them their weight, telling them their heart rate, telling them that they're looking up divorce lawyers, right? Examples of things that could leak out, but it's really emphasizing the security that they're focused on. Right? I hope they truly are. And then I think the third thing is, it gets a lot of press in our world, is the concept of moving to the cloud. For those of us who are really familiar with that, the story, your iPhone, your Samsung, your Android files, your music, all up in the cloud. You can get them anywhere. Your banks now, you're doing electronically, things like that. So cloud-based services and moving away from everybody having stuff physically stored by themselves is now is growing significantly. In the one area, recently in some of the Gartner data, when we looked at the different applications and technologies and markets and how they were growing, the cloud-based businesses were all growing and expected to grow even faster than might have been earlier in the year. Now, granted, everything's taking a little dip right now, and things that were more legacy type of products and markets are not moving as fast. And then you see segments that are changing differently underneath that. But those are at least three things that I see. So, risk and resiliency, security, and then of course the transformation to the cloud. Those are three major trends going on right now.
Wow. That is great to actually have a good sense of, guys, because for everybody that's listening and watching, because obviously I'm just seeing a lot of shifts, even small and medium-sized businesses. When you mention use of the cloud space and digitalization, all these files take tons of memory. And as a result, majority of the products and services, stuff it's in the cloud in terms of also file, in terms of exchange and share, in terms of virtual access to certain things, which also, of course, has more users, as a result, more risks. So everything is interconnected, and you cannot solve one issue or cannot look at just the one, win here. I was like, this is great, we're all on cloud, but what do we do to maintain it, the safety, security, and also that we're training staff and members to use it properly and not create because as we know, all the bridges always usually come from human error. And neglect and not following through the process and protocol. And as we know, that is also very detrimental right now, as everybody wants to get a data. And what is the data? When you look at the cost of data, and that data is suppressing or overpassing actually the cost of other in the past known to be precious, metals or gas and oil or whatever it is. It's like what we're truly turning into right now. What is the data and what is going to be in years to come?
Yeah.
And how we again use the data. That's another other aspects of it. And I'm seeing a lot of regulations from individual use and different very rigid policies and procedures.
Absolutely.
So do you mind sharing a little bit about that too, and how are we doing in 2020 with that?
Yeah, well, I think that goes back to a little bit ties into all three of the points that I made, but mostly in the security space. So right, there's a lot more attention now on individual security, individual data. A lot of the services that people get are free, but the cost of that freedom is access to your information. And
absolutely.
So it remains a big concern. I think Europe has led the way with the, I think, GDPR to data protection, and you're starting to see rumblings of that in other parts of the world. So it remains a really big issue, whether at the individual level or just companies in and of themselves protecting their data. We all live today on mountains of data. And I almost like to dial ahead 1,000 years and say, what do they do with all this data that they were collecting? Because we look back to the Middle Ages, and there's really only things that people wrote. There's no pictures, there's no movies, there's no files stored or anything like that. So all of that's based on word of mouth that we have, and maybe some physical relics. But 1,000 years from now, what happened with all this data? Where did it all go? Did it help us? And did we learn from it? It's going to be an interesting thing, not directly related to your question. But no, the security.
But you're right. I mean, when you think about it, 1,000 years ago and in 1,000 years from now, what will be? It's just amazing. It doesn't appear that long, or appears that it is, but in reality, evolution of everything comes to a certain pivotal point, and then something else occurs. So when do we go over a certain threshold, right? And we see certain things that has to change. Now we're getting, even with iPhone, and more, but with more memory and additional memory that you can buy. And all of a sudden it's like, how come I'm eating up so much of the memory in my iPhone? Of course, you're saving all these videos and photos, Izabela. And it's like, oh, come on. Things that you really don't think about it, but in reality, definitely shaping and changing our habits as well as our needs. I mean, how many ways we use even iPhone as a device, not anymore just to make calls and send each other texts. We have so many ways that we're using such a one small device, and think about where things going to go in years to come. The percentage of time that most people use their phone as a phone is actually dropped precipitously. Nowadays, I mean, I have a work phone and a personal phone, but I'm on my computer doing most of the calls. So I spend my phone is used for health data, for exercise data, for maps, for email correspondence. Every once in a while, I get a FaceTime call. Yeah, definitely our habits are altering in as a result, obviously, of what organizations are doing. So do you mind just touching a little bit, since I mentioned also that you are part of this very special group at Gartner. Do you mind sharing a little bit about, for the general managers of the Gartner, what exactly you guys are doing in the little specialized area?
Sure. So just to recap what I mentioned earlier about the role, we're working with high technology companies, applications companies, software companies, telecommunications, and the like, to help them, their lead product executives, or a series of their lead product executives, be successful in the marketplace, which means grow, right? Without a revenue growth. So we spend a lot of time evaluating the proprietary market data and the analysis of the markets that Gartner has, understanding where companies are growing, what rate they're growing in. We have information about the performance of the companies in the marketplace from surveys that we do, and we use those surveys to help companies understand when they've been successful, why, and when they haven't, why. Similarly, they can look at their competitors and understand the same exact things. When their competitors have been successful, why? When their competitors have not been successful, why? So that provides a lot of data and information and insight for these clients to evaluate the vision that they have, the specific product strategies that they have, and how to adjust that as they go forward. Once that's in place, we then move more toward bringing the product to market. What do they need to do to increase their visibility in the marketplace, improve the amount of times that they get brought into a bid and asked to provide their technology to their customers. And it's almost all B2B in our case. Third, now that they're getting the participate in bids or requests for quote or RFPs, many different words people use, how are they winning? Are their winning rates improving? And then when they get in the market, are they being successful there? Right? So we bring a combination of a lot of data that Gartner, as you mentioned earlier, has accumulated over the years. And we contextualize that for the specific clients, so it's relevant to their products, their marketplaces. But then, we guide them through the entire life cycle, from the concept of their products in through their entire go-to-market, and then success in the marketplace. And, we continue to evolve that, whatever the product cycles are, every 12 to 18 or 24 months, and move on to the next major domain. Help them anticipate where inflection points might become. I'm not going to rescind they're only visible in the rearview mirror, but we start seeing trends and where those trends are going based on interacting with so many different companies all around the globe. And that, that advice and that insight and that objectivity with an outside-in view is extremely valuable to our client base.
And the reason I'm asking all of this specifically during the current time, you want to know what exactly, are you measuring right things? Are you looking at the right information in order to make a decision? And how you're making decision? Are you being proactive versus reactive? Because I'm seeing also trends that a lot of projects and programs are being put to kibosh because they're not even being evaluated properly, or they're not being supported and validated with the right data. As a result, some things that could or should be maybe kept up, they're not. But in the same time, everybody's seeking some traction and stable footing. And right now, of course, that is where, even though we complain the magnitude of the data, but if we're not analyzing, looking through the right lens, it's not useless. I'm sorry, it's not useful, it's useless. Right. And you guys obviously made that useful on a very short cycle, so you can really start getting traction very, very quickly. And reason again, I want for the listeners and people that are watching to really grasp and step back and look at what we can possibly change and where the opportunities are.
Yeah, absolutely. It's interesting. If we're doing our job well, what you just described is a perfect way that a company would take advantage of that, is using that data and making sure they could validate, understand, look at the assumptions they may not have factored in there. So that's a really key part of what we do. The other thing that's interesting, based on what you just said, Izabela, is we see a lot of focus now on taking existing products and being very successful in the marketplace. It's not that there's anybody curtailing their long-term development, but in this short term with this disruption, are they able to reposition products that now might have had one value proposition before COVID, and now with a remote work from home environment, there's a different proposition.
Very
how do I sell when my salespeople are not out there having dinners and drinking wine with their potential customers, right? So there's a lot of this short-term adjustment with what do we do to get ourselves solid on our feet, while at the same time, as we mentioned earlier, not necessarily forgetting about the future, because the future will arrive. We know that.
Absolutely. But I'm sure it's scaling, right? Because of the certain things, that because it's not any more appetite for certain products on the of projected or anticipated percentage as we were looking 2018, 2019. So where the needs are, and then what can we elevate and increase so that we can augment deficits in other areas. As we know, again, we have to, and I love, one of my favorite things is, again, transformation, and that is the really process that takes time and effort, and it's within individuals, within teams, as well within organizations. It's not just quick, rapid change. We roll out new technology and let's go. So I'm glad you guys are equally investing, and I'm sure that contributes tremendously to your success, recognizing how important it is to really foster internally, not only just innovation, but transformation.
Absolutely.
And testing things out, and then disseminating outside externally to partners, vendors, customers, and everybody else.
Right.
So if you don't mind, just to share from legacy aspects, I know you have your own internal legacy and desire and drive. Obviously, we're on the Legacy Leaders Show, and I just love seeing over the years through our friendship and remote virtual relationship through LinkedIn, and now having, again, virtual conversation and interview, which I'm super excited about, obviously. but I know you have passion for technology and everything, but I know you have some other personal passions and that tie together for the greater good. So do you mind just sharing some of those that you are still having in your bucket list and you wanted to accomplish to make that positive change and transformation?
Sure. Actually, I think the biggest one is I recently read a book called Younger Next Year. And as since
Wow.
I'm getting closer to 70 than 60, not quite there yet. It's health and both physical and mental health and well-being are really, really important to me. So I exercise very regularly, go out on long bike rides, and I'm the type of guy that likes to push myself really hard. So very, very internally competitive. And it's really hard because I've kept records on my
You
exercise
look
for all these years.
fantastic, Michael, by the way. So
Well,
go
thank you,
ahead.
thank you. The tan of living in Florida too helps a little bit. But that really drives me quite a bit. And listening to I did an audiobook, and just listening to it was really for me validation and affirmation of the healthy lifestyle, the need for a combination of exercise, personal fulfillment, relaxation, friendship and togetherness. It was really a combination of all of those things. But that really helped me because I'd like to keep working for another maybe 10 more years, 7 to 10 more years, as long as we're having fun. And then after that, live healthy enough to really enjoy the fruits of life. So it's I continue to focus in that area, and hopefully it'll work out.
Absolutely. And obviously with the right attitude and mindset, everything is possible. So I love your athlete for life mentality, because
Absolutely.
a lot of people feel like there's something has to give. And more than ever, we're recognizing the importance of self-care, and you're a great role model. And a lot of times, unfortunately, actually, and leaders in the leadership team and C-suite or supporting roles don't usually exude that. So it's great to see someone who is also walking the talk and be able to really show that and demonstrate, as well as rally their teams to do the same.
Absolutely.
So right now it's a chase for longevity, and obviously, and I'm hearing this with a lot of companies, that they're really recognizing what is left to do, and it's like we just want to make sure that we have a quality of life, right?
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Yeah. And I have to do a shout out to my boss, Yvonne Highland. She's a real exercise and physical health and mental well-being role model and advocate herself. So it's we'll talk to each other. She's on her treadmill sometimes, and I'm out driving, getting ready to go on a bike ride, and we stay in touch like that. So we're able to figure out how to blend personal health and well-being with work together.
That is beautiful. And I really love that you are able to preserve that while you're working in such a highly demanded role within the company, which also reflects the culture. So what is also coming for Gartner, if you don't mind, where you guys headed? What are you guys going to surprise us next with that you can share?
Well, hopefully we surprise everybody next year with events being live again. This year, of course, has been very, very difficult, and we made the, I think, extremely good decision to curtail face-to-face venues through 2020. And now we're developing and continuing to implement virtual mechanisms there to deliver a similar experience. And of course, it's going to be always very difficult to replace a completely one-on-one personal experience that an individual can have at a live event, and the hundreds, if not thousands of people that they have the opportunity to bump into and discuss. But we're continuing to focus on what we call role-based services. So really designing what we do for specific roles in an organization. So whether it's the HR officer, the product officer like that we deal with, the chief sales officer. We already work very extensively with chief information officers, CEOs, CFOs. Right? That suite of roles allows us to really, really tune the research and the insight that the team has developed over the years and continues to expand on with large footprints of data, as you mentioned, and continue to really support companies at that level, so that a person in a role can say, I have a service that I can lean on and take advantage of that in the future in a way that is unique to what Gartner provides compared to others.
Brilliant. So diminishing silos and creating more interaction and more creative support, that you guys then just continue to thrive. That's awesome.
That's the goal.
Thank you. Thank you. It was absolute pleasure to have you. And a last quick question. Is anything there that you would like to listeners and viewers to live with? I know we cover a lot, again, people, technology, processes, the issues, the future, but obviously with such amazing wealth of knowledge and history in navigating so well tremendously these changes and transformation, what would be your piece of advice?
I'm going to go back to the one word that I mentioned a little bit earlier, and it's compassion. It's a challenging time for everybody in this world right now. There's a lot going on. I don't need to point out to any one specific thing. Anybody who's even remotely aware understands the dynamics that we have. It is really just respecting and understanding everybody individually. And your choices are your choices, and that's fine. Others have different choices, and so long as they don't affect one another negatively, respect where people are at, respect where they've come from, understand where they've come from, especially if you have to interact with them, and appreciate that they might have arrived at their life and their position in life because they took a different road than you. And some of those might have been choices, some of those might have been just things that happened to them. But compassion is really key. Understand, respect, and if I can drop a Beatles quote at the very end, all you need is love. I think that at the end of the day, that's for me the most important component of leadership and going forward is compassion and love.
Fantastic. Absolutely fantastic. Again, thank you so much for your time.